Something died on the 1st of January 1914. An imagined civilization was aborted. We have lost 100 years. May He restore to us the years the locusts have eaten. When Yorubas perceive themselves as progressive people, sometimes it is assumed that this is rooted in the illustriousness of a very remote pre-modern era. That is probably wrong. During the first half of the 19th century, about 50,000 West Africans who had been forcefully uprooted from their native countries as a result of the slave trade were rescued and resettled in Sierra Leone through the efforts of British abolitionists. Most of these rescued slaves were from areas that would later be part of Nigeria, and Yorubas constituted a majority among them. In the early 1840s, some of the Yorubas in Sierra Leone began to return home. Over the following decades, their population grew steadily, and they came to be known as Saro, an elided form of Sierra Leone. They were soon joined by freed slaves from Brazil and Cuba, who began to return probably in the late 1840s and were called Aguda. The crisis of displacement, the circumstances surrounding their rescue, the detachment from their cultural roots, and their encounter with Christianity and Western civilization during their years away from home, all combined to prepare them for a role in history that would significantly shape the destiny of their homeland. Returning after decades abroad, armed with a worldview that was radically different from those of their kinfolk, and also with paraphernalia of modernity that were at once puzzling and enchanting, the Saro set about revolutionizing the way of life in their homeland. While they came back with many innovative ideas, the most revolutionary tools in their armory were the Christian gospel and the abolitionist impulse for social transformation. To be sure, the Saro were as diverse as any group of people can be, with varying and complex allegiances and motivations. Many exhibited only a tenuous connection with Christianity, with many others remaining Muslim or adherents of the Yoruba religious tradition. However, a significant number clearly saw themselves as both beneficiaries and ambassadors of the blessings of the Christian gospel. This story is primarily about the latter group and their role in the planting of Christianity in Yorubaland. This story is also about their quest for social change, their rescue and afterwards nurture in Sierra Leone through the agency of British abolitionists, conditioned them to see the Christian faith in terms of body and soul. Their worldview tightly integrated spiritual conversion and societal transformation. The fact was not lost on them that their benefactors, Granville Sharp, William Wilberforce, Henry Thornton, Zachary Macaulay, Hannah More, Charles Grant, Angela Burdett Coates, Thomas Fowler Buxton, and several others were staunch evangelical Christians and social reformers who gallantly combated the moral and social problems of their time, including ending the transatlantic slave trade. These ideas permeated the social and cultural milieu in which the Saro were nurtured, and they saw their actions as a model for carrying out Christ's mission in their own homeland. Upon returning home, the Saro set about reshaping the communities where they settled, but their commitment to bringing about change was relentlessly tested. Perilous labors, failed ventures, misguided alliances, and devastating setbacks. Besides their efforts being mischaracterized, resisted, or simply ignored, perhaps the greatest difficulty the Saro had to deal with was an existence that straddled two worlds, Yoruba and European, and negotiating complete acceptance in either realm was often complicated. The Saro were seen as a special class in the communities where they settled, and because of the resources at their disposal, were both courted and resisted, depending on the individuals or groups who had the most to benefit or lose as a result of their interventions. To some, the coming of the Saro was a blessing, to others a curse. On the other hand, they had to endure the antipathy of many Europeans in West Africa who detested the emergence of the Saro as a force to be reckoned with. The admiration and loyalty that their growing prestige and power inspired among their countrymen undercut the regime of absolute reverence that many Europeans on the western coast of Africa felt entitled to. Despite the complicatedness of Saro life and the many obstacles they had to overcome, with time they successfully forged a unique culture and power base. From this position, they tried to fundamentally reshape the nature of Yoruba society through the instrumentality of the Christian faith and the traditions of Western civilization. This remark by Saro historian Samuel Johnson in the History of the Yorubas captured the core of Saro thinking. When we have allowed for all the difficulties of a transition stage, the disadvantages that must of necessity arise by the application of rules and ideas of a highly civilized people to one of another race, degree of civilization, and of different ideas, we should hope the net result will be a distinct gain to the country, but that peace should reign universally with prosperity and advancement, and that the disjointed units should all be once more welded into one, under one head from the Niger to the coast, as in the happy days of Abiodun, so dear to our fathers, that clannish spirit disappear, and above all, that Christianity should be the principal religion in the land. Paganism and Mohammedanism, having had their full trial, should be the wish and prayer of every true son of Yoruba. It was this kind of evangelical abolitionist zeal that laid the foundation for what is considered to be Yoruba modernity. Unfortunately, their influence didn't continue long enough for their habits and customs to fully take root. Based on their initial progress, the Saro had probably anticipated a not too distant future where life in Yorubaland would compare favorably with those of European societies. Sadly, that wasn't to be. From about the 1890s, the Saro had to contend with a number of forces whose emergence frustrated their efforts on several fronts and plunged them into an existential crisis that gradually undermined the enthusiasm of an earlier period. The final blow was struck on the 1st of January 1914, and the Saro Age was effectively brought to a close. Had their onward march continued, Yoruba history would likely have flowed forward in a wholly different direction, and we would probably regard them today as our founding fathers. This is an attempt to recover a seminal moment in Yoruba history, to capture that brief flowering of the Saro spirit, which arguably represents the most powerful philosophical and cultural moment Yorubaland has ever seen. It's been roughly a century since the Saro mission of transformation was truncated, and Yorubaland has sunk to abysmal depths with regards to its ethos. Like a dense fog, a betrayal of the fervent hopes of that founding generation now pervades the land. Something hideous has seized control of its soul, and it has gradually reconciled itself to a mediocre existence. A new generation can pierce the darkness and revive their mission. But first, there must be a rebirth of the progressive spirit the Saro embodied. Knowing their story is an important step towards achieving this. It is the story of Thomas Peters, Joseph Claudius May, the Crowders, the Johnsons, the Cardozos, Seraphos Bonetta, John Otumba Payne, the Macaulays, James Johnson, R.B. Blaze, the Darochas, Victoria Davis, Orishatuke Faduma, Onyeka Abayomi, the Azomsals, Mojola Baby, Fumila Ransom Kuti, and scores of others.